How is everyone's day going?
Great.
I'm doing well.
Good, good. Very excited for this conversation. Bria or Joanna will probably do a proper introduction, but we're going to have Bria and Chef Kevin Mitchell speaking, and it's going to be a great conversation. So thank you all for joining us today.
Bria.
Hey, how's
What's
it
up?
going, Chef?
What's up? Are you alive? You sleep? You awake over there?
I'm definitely awake. It's been a fun morning in the ChefWorks HQ that we can always count on.
That is for sure.
Oh, look, everyone, my mom is here.
I love that.
My mom is definitely not a chef.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Mom.
Hey, Mom.
I take offense to that.
And then while we're just getting everything set up, when we dive into the roundtable, if everyone can just make sure your microphones are on mute, just while Chef Kevin Mitchell and Bria are speaking, that would be incredible. Just so that way we can make sure we're really hearing everything that they are saying, because I know they've got some great stuff to talk about today.
Ok. Yo amo Sergio y
All right, so we're just going to give Joanna a minute. She's just getting the live stream going in Facebook. So that way we can have some other attendees on, and we'll get going.
Okay, I'm just gonna do a sound check really quick.
We can hear you on this end, Joanna.
Yeah. Okay, we're ready.
All right, take it
nice
away,
crowd.
Joanna. It's all you.
All right, so welcome everyone to our February roundtable here in table 1807. This month we have Chef Kevin Mitchell as our roundtable guest. We are honoring Black History Month in 1807, and what better person to come in and talk to us than Chef Kevin Mitchell, who is an expert around storytelling with food. So first, what I'm going to do is introduce our host for the day, Bria Kelly. And just got to switch tabs here 1 second. So you all might recognize Bria from the YouTube video sound bites that we had posted in the group with Chef Kevin. If you haven't watched that, I'm going to drop the link there so you guys can see it. She hosts our series Sound Bites, where she asks unforgettable questions to up-and-coming chefs. And Bria is the mind behind much of our behind-the-scenes magic as well. Bria went to design school to create art that has a message. In her role as strategic partnerships and brand manager at ChefWorks, she fosters our brand's most meaningful partnerships while leading creative design. We're excited to announce that she will be hosting our Table 1807 event today. You can catch her at the next Table 1807 event, where she'll be driving thoughtful discussions that help you get the most out of the community that we've built. And now let's get to know Chef Kevin Mitchell. Chef Kevin Mitchell is an author, culinary historian, chief instructor at the Culinary Institute of Charleston, and adjunct instructor at the Culinary Institute of America. Upon earning dual degrees from the Culinary Institute of America, Chef Mitchell further refined his skills in notable restaurants throughout the country. In 2008, he became the first African-American chef instructor at the Culinary Institute of Charleston at Trident Technical College. In 2018, Chef Mitchell earned a master's degree in Southern Studies from the University of Mississippi. Among Chef Mitchell's passion for good food, he expertly shares the stories behind the uniquely regional dishes we enjoy today. In his own words, it is vital to connect the food to the people and remember the once enslaved chefs and cooks on whose shoulders we stand for creating the food we now know as Southern cuisine. Chef Mitchell was named a South Carolina Chef Ambassador for the year 2020, a leadership position he will hold through 2021. He has also co-authored Taste the South, South Carolina's signature foods, recipes, and their stories with Dr. David Shields. So welcome, Chef Kevin Mitchell. And Miss Bria, I will let you take it away.
Hi, everybody. First, I'd like to thank you for joining us. Oftentimes we get asked the question of how does Table 1807 foster community? And I think Chef Kevin's presence here and the stories that we've been able to tell with him and visiting him are the embodiment of what community is and what Table 1807 is capable of. We met him through Table 1807. We reached out, and honestly, I think with our relationship, we've been able to make the most meaningful content yet. So with that being said, I'd love to hear more about what we did with Chef Kevin Mitchell and where he is with his ChefScholar Dinner. A little bit more about that. If you watched our Soundbites episode, some of the footage has come from that event. So Chef Kevin Mitchell, take it away. Tell us a little bit more about your dinner series.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here to share my story and how I got involved in the ChefScholar Dinner Series. ChefScholar Dinner Series actually is an extension of a dinner that I hosted here in Charleston in 2015, where myself and actually Dr. David Shields recreated a dinner that was held here in 1865, probably about 2 weeks or so after the ending of the Civil War, where a gentleman, Chef Nat Fuller, who was a formerly enslaved person who went on to become one of the greatest Black caterers in the city of Charleston in the late 1800s. And how we get to or come to know Nat Fuller is through some research through David and I, who found this research on this dinner that he held where for the first time Blacks and whites broke bread in the same room at the same time, in the spirit of equality, also in the spirit of reconciliation. And I had met David back in 2013, 14, when he was here visiting with the South Carolina Gold Rice Foundation, and they had what they call the Rice Symposium. And he and I met just through me doing a demo on chicken bog using Carolina Gold rice, and our paths crossed again where he introduced me to the story of Nat Fuller, who was this formerly enslaved person who apprenticed under one of the other great Black caterers here, Eliza Seymour Lee. And he shared the story with me of Nat Fuller and this dinner that he held. And he basically said, I'd like to recreate this dinner basically 150 years later or as a way to celebrate the ending of the Civil War. So he was looking at telling the story of Nat Fuller through food and not really trying to do what most people were doing at the time by honoring the end of the Civil War by actually doing a recreation of the Civil War. He wanted to do something that was a little bit more meaningful. And he told me the story of how he hosted this dinner in his restaurant called The Bachelor's Retreat. And fortunately, the building still stands in Charleston. It's an art gallery now, but back in 1865 and prior, it was his restaurant. And when David told me the story and proposed that we recreate this dinner, honestly, I didn't think it was going to happen. I just, you have conversations with people and about doing things, and of course, life goes on, and you go your way, they go their way, and sometimes you never really reconnect. But I would say within 2 weeks or so after that initial conversation, um, I found out that he was very serious because he inundated my email with any and every fact that he could find about Nat Fuller, as far as him being a caterer, a restaurant owner. He was also a butcher. He created cocktails. So he did so many different things. And once I received all this information, again, I realized that he was very serious. And we set on this path to recreate this dinner. We invited several luminaries from the Charleston area, from the College of Charleston, some historians. Actually, Natalie Dupree was involved, Chef Sean Brock, and we had an initial meeting and to see or to gauge what the interest would be for us to or host this dinner, and everyone was pretty much in agreement. David, his first thing was, Kevin, you should stand in the feet or stand in the shoes of Nat Fuller, which initially blew me away. I was really taken back because I was thinking, how could I, at that point, stand in the shoes of this great person that did something that was not only historical, but something that brought together two communities in the city of Charleston. So he, of course, convinced me that I can do it, and we sat down and did some further research on trying to find out what was actually served at the dinner, who was there. We do know that there were 80 people there, 40 white, 40 black, people that were within his circle and other luminaries from Charleston at that particular time. And the only thing that we really could not find was the actual menu that was served in 1865. And so, of course, like with a lot of people, when they talk to chefs, they say, well, you are a chef, you come up with the menu. So we were able to piece together a menu just from researching other menus that were served at that particular time, menus that he served in some of his catering functions, menus from some of his predecessors, and even menus from some of his biggest competitors from hotels in the city. And what I decided to do was to see items that occurred more than once throughout all these menus. And that's how we decided we were going to do the menu, serve what we served. And we also decided that we were definitely going to serve the food true to the style in which it was served in 1865, which was Russian style service, where items of food are brought to you or to your table on platters, and servers would actually place these items of food on your plate for you. And then another server would come behind with a sauce or a garnish. And then we would kind of travel through the dining room that way. And we decided that we would still do 80 people. We formed a committee of who was going to be invited to the dinner. And for me, the really great thing was I wasn't a part of that committee. I didn't want to be involved in who was coming to the dinner. I just wanted to cook. And I think that all chefs, we don't necessarily care about who's in the room. For me, it's all about, what we're going to cook, and that we make sure that the food is, of course, delicious and satisfying, which was really a good thing afterwards, because there were several people who would call me or email me very upset because they did not get an invite to the dinner. But we wanted to do the dinner exactly the way it was in 1865. It was invite only, because it ended the dinner was held at the end of the Civil War. Guests were actually escorted into the building by the 54th Regiment, which we were able to find the 54th Regiment reenactors, and we did the same thing where the guests were escorted to the place where we actually held the dinner. And fortunately, we were able to host the cocktail hors d'oeuvre reception in the building in which the bachelor retreat stood. And once we were ready to walk basically 2 blocks, we had the city of Charleston police blockade 2 blocks of street, and we actually walked in the street to Unity Alley, where we held the dinner itself at the restaurant, which is formerly called McCrady's. And we uh, just just being in that room, because that room in that building would have been standing at that particular time in which Nat Fuller hosted his dinner, was a truly historical moment for all that were involved to be there and taste the food. And we, of course, we had toasts, and we did something really cool where we hosted an essay contest, and we offered 6 tickets to 6 people who wrote the best essay. And the essay question was one thing: tell us why you deserve a seat at the dinner. And hundreds of essays came in. The local newspaper, the Person Courier, and some of the editors actually read through all the essays, and they chose the 6 people that would receive a ticket for the dinner. And fortunately, they were all in attendance. They all gave toasts. And one really interesting thing about when the dinner was held, it was basically bookended by 2 major events that happened in the city. One, prior to the dinner, was the shooting of an African American gentleman who was running away from the police, was shot in the back, which caused a lot of social unrest here in the city. And then, of course, it happened just before the Emmanuel 9, when the 9 parishioners were killed in the Emmanuel Church here in the city of Charleston. And one of the attendees, Clementa Pinckney, was the pastor of the Emmanuel 9, or the church. And fortunately, I was able to meet him. We didn't talk for very long. Our dinner was held in April. Of course, that happened in June. So I think hosting that dinner was a way, once again, to follow in the footsteps of Nat Fuller and bringing communities together from different places and trying to get people thinking on the same plane.
Obviously, this is a big operation. You have a lot of people involved. With that being said, what is something that you can offer as advice, or what is your biggest takeaway from how these events have played out?
Well, the extension was taking the concept of what we did with Nat Fuller and bringing it kind of full scale and bringing it into this, the Chef Scholar Dinner Series, where I wanted to honor those who came before me, formerly enslaved, freed, and also enslaved cooks who, for me, laid the foundation of what we know today of Southern food, and also basically what we know of American cuisine as a whole. So it comes together really by wanting to host a dinner, honor these people, and find a way to bring communities together through this dinner. Now, the dinner that we host are on a much smaller scale. It's 16 people because we want to keep it as intimate as possible, in order to share the stories. For me, the advice I would give someone basically is to, if you have an idea to host a dinner like this, my advice would be for you just to do it. Unfortunately, I have someone in my life, my wife Rhonda, who, really inspired me to continue to share those stories. And these dinners, and Bria, just by being there, they don't they don't happen without my wife, who handles a lot of the
Rhonda's a dynamo for sure.
yes, yes, she is. And she's on the call, so she's
Hi,
probably
Rhonda.
but yeah, she is a dynamo, and she handles a lot of the kind of the background things. And she, of course, she does the front of the house, and she does, of course, a wonderful job at doing that. So once again, that advice is just just do it. Get to a place where you put yourself out there, and you make it happen. And I think that's what we did.
Okay, so a lot of what we talk about, or we have talked about openly, is your dinner series.
Mhm.
But what I find most interesting about you is that you're an educator. I think we talked about it briefly in the Sound Bites episode, but I do believe culinary does have a lot to benefit from those that are willing to teach. And can you go over what role you think you've played in being a Black educator, and a culinary educator in general, and what significance it has?
I think it's, for me, coming into being an educator, and specifically coming into the Culinary Institute of Charleston as the first African American chef instructor. I think walking, and we discussed this, like walking through the door or through the classroom is the hugest impact that I think I have. When students of color, students that look like me, see me and I walk through the door, I don't have to say anything, because they just see me in my chef coat, in my hat, and they know that, or at least I hope they know. And what I try to drive home to them is, if they can see someone like me, then they can see someone like themselves doing the same thing. It's not a unknown fact that throughout culinary schools throughout the country, there is a lack of African American instructors in some of the larger culinary schools. But I do think someone like me, and my connections through being an educator through being an educator and having these connections with other culinary schools, is having an impact, because it's allowing for other schools to see that they can have African American chefs be educators in their school and educate students, period. Whether the main thing is, just as an African American student, to see an African American chef instructor is huge. But for me, I'm an educator. I educate whoever's in the classroom. It doesn't really matter to me. But I do know it is, there is this sense of pride when I see my students go on and they become great chefs, and then hopefully eventually they come back and decide that they want to become educators themselves. And I think it's very important. This love for education comes from my mother, my grandmother, who always instilled, get your education, continue on. And I hope that when students see what I do, Black or white, that they are encouraged to continue their education as well.
So you are a historian and a scholar. What do you think we serve to learn from researching history or utilizing history in the way we all approach today?
Well, the saying goes, we have to know where we come from to know where we're going. So it's always important to understand where we come from, where food comes from, the people that are connected to the food. So it's just it's just really, for me specifically, personally, it's really rewarding for me to get into some books and really try to understand where these things come from and why we do what we do, whether is as an educator or whether it's a chef, and what, why do we cook a dish a specific way? Where does it come from? And then for me specifically, who does it come from is the most important thing. Um, and I know history and research is not for everyone, but it's just something that really appeals to me. And it all just stems from doing the Nat Fuller dinner in 2015, and then being inspired to continue my education and get my graduate degree at the University of Mississippi, where I was able to dig a little bit deeper and really find these stories and really find this information about the ingredients and the people.
And those stories are, I think, what you've got to know very intimately. Is there any individual in particular that you feel has impacted you on a personal level? Just diving into their stories. I'm sure they all could possibly impact you on a personal level, but is there anyone that stands out? I think you've mentioned quite a few to me.
Well,
First, before.
definitely we start with Nat Fuller. I joke with people and say, I am Nat Fuller. I embody who he is and who he was. Um, because he was one of the first people where I was actually able to really dig into his story and his life, through working with David and others. But there's, as you know, and as you said, there's so many other people, whether it's James Hemings, who was a former slave and becomes, he actually becomes what we call as the first professional African American chef, and he belonged to Thomas Jefferson, and he was able to travel to France and learn how to prepare meals from French chefs, and create these dishes that we know of today. Whether it's the creme brulee, or it's Hercules Posey, who belonged to who belonged to George Washington, and who we know has created what we know today as macaroni and cheese, not specifically in the form that we eat it today, but it still was some type of pasta with some type of cheese cooked together in a custard. And of course, throughout time we've adjusted and adapted that recipe. So I always start with those chefs who were formerly enslaved, who go on to become these great caterers and restaurant owners and chefs. And then I always move into more contemporary chefs, other chefs that come before me, Patrick Clark and Daryl Evans, who becomes the first African American chef to compete in the Culinary Olympics. And my mentor, Chef Joseph Randall, who is in Savannah, and Joe and I have a very special relationship. He's like one of the first Black chefs that I actually got to meet and talk to. As a culinary student, you know 18, 19 years old, I got his phone number and I just called him out of the blue and said, hey, I'm this 19-year-old kid in culinary school, and I've read so much about you. I would love for you to mentor me. And we've been friends and colleagues ever since. And fortunately, he is still amongst us to see the things that I've been able to accomplish. On a more personal level, most people know I get my inspiration from my grandmother, who was teaching me how to cook when I was 6 years old. Also teaching, for some strange reason, teaching me how to iron clothes at 6 years old. And I tell people the story of how she inspired me and how I got into food, and the fact that I come from a single parent home, and I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, and I have three brothers, and they were allowed to go outside and play. And she made me stay in the house and learn how to cook. And I couldn't at 6 years old, I'm like, I want to go outside. I want to play. But I asked her, and she sat me down and, said that one day I'm not going to be here to prepare your meals and to do your laundry and all those things. So you need to know how to do these things. And my response still was, well, what about the other three that are outside playing? They don't need to know how to cook. And I really believe that she saw in me at that age, which is something that I didn't see, that led me into this path of first of food and becoming a chef, and then going on to become um, a scholar, where I can actually, of course, mesh and bring together both those worlds.
Can I ask about your dinner? And can we talk about, so I will link everyone to the YouTube video that features Bria and Chef Kevin and the dinner that he has. This is the ChefScholar Dinner, and this one particularly honored Edna Lewis.
Yes.
Can we talk a little bit about that experience that you create and like where your thought process is there, and just break that down for us?
Yeah. Well, there's no super thought process for me. It's just wanting to honor a specific chef or chefs. The first two dinners we did honored 4 chefs who were formerly enslaved or freed cooks that come from the antebellum period, and the aim is to continue to honor those chefs who have influenced my culinary career. So the last one, yes, was in honor of Edna Lewis. The way I go about, say, putting them together, the menu, of course, I do have several of her cookbooks, and I try to base my menu on recipes from her books, but I also still want to do some more contemporary things, but always giving a nod to who she was. And fortunately, I also know people that knew her personally, and my mentor, Chef Joe Randall, was very close to her, and it was all just about a phone call saying, "Hey Joe, I know you hung out with Edna. What are some of the things that she cooked? What are some of the things that she liked? What did she like to eat herself? What did she like to drink?" And one really cool thing that I found out was she was a huge fan of Jack Daniels. And she drank Jack Daniels pretty much after every service, no matter where she worked. So in creating, we always serve a specialty cocktail during the hors d'oeuvre reception, and so we also knew that she loved mint juleps. So we decided to do a gentleman Jack mint julep in honor of her. And the hors d'oeuvres come from, of course, she is the grande dame of Southern cuisine. So we did deviled eggs, and we also know that she loved duck confit. So that was something that we placed in one of the hors d'oeuvres as well. And then when we go into the entrees, it was just all about finding places and menus where she cooked. So we do know that she was a chef here in Charleston at Middleton Place. She was a chef at Gage and Toner in New York. She had her own restaurant, and fortunately through social media, which is really great, I'm able to reach out to some of these people who still had some of her old menus, and I was able to kind of look at her menus and create the dishes around her menus, around her recipes, and always, once again, honoring her. So when we got to, say, the entree, we know that she raised pheasant and quail, so we wanted to feature quail as the entree. And fortunately, my friends at Manchester Farms, who she had a relationship as well with, was very gracious to donate the quail for the dinner. So it all just starts with okay, when I sit down with Rhonda, who is the chef or chefs that we want to honor, and we try to run or do the same chef maybe 2 or 3 times in a row, because we run these dinners once a month, um, just to give people the opportunity who want to come and be a part of honoring, say, Etna. They have that opportunity to do that. So, we're looking in April, where we're going to we're probably going to still do Edna for April, because she was born in April. She was born April 13th. Um, so we will probably do the dinner in her honor again on the 14th, because we normally do these dinners on a Friday evening, um, depending, and of course a lot of that will depend on the venue that we are hosting the dinner, the dates, so on and so forth.
And you are in the process of scaling, which I think is very cool.
Yeah, we definitely still want to keep
Within
it
reason.
as intimate as possible. So it gives me an opportunity to be in the dining room, kind of having this one-on-one conversation with the guests. Once you get too big, there's too many people, there's too many things going on, and people miss the story. They miss what I'm trying to get across, because I come out during each course and give the guests, if it's one chef, I give the guests different tidbits of things that happened in her life, how she got into cooking, and where she worked, and of course, the cookbooks that she wrote. So I think 16 is the sweet spot that we're at right now. But we definitely have talked about maybe even going up to 20, which still makes it intimate enough for me to have these conversations and for the guests to really get the story. And that's one of the most important parts for me. Yes, I want them to have delicious food, but I want them to have the story that, once again, for me, connects that story to the person, to the food.
Joanna.
Yeah, and so just to remind everyone that this is for a group of 15. And so I like how you're saying that it has this intimate factor where you're able to get the storytelling across there. And also I'm curious about what's the vibe like in the room with a small amount of people like that, and like when they come in versus when they leave. Do you see them like connecting?
Well, definitely by the time they leave, they are connecting, and that could be attributed to the fact that we do serve wine with each course. But no, I think,
And Jack Daniel's mint juleps. Don't forget those.
but I do think definitely at the end of the evening there is this connection, because of course when they walk in, most of them do not know each other. We sell tickets through Eventbrite. So if you're purchasing a ticket, of course you're going to purchase 2 tickets for yourself and your spouse or whoever, and then everyone else that comes in, you don't know each other. So I think in the beginning, everyone's trying to, they're having their hors d'oeuvres, they're having their mint julep, and they're trying to kind of gauge, what's going on, what's happening. And, I do try to make myself available for them just to come out and say hello. Rhonda has already greeted them. She's working with them, getting the cocktail and the hors d'oeuvres. But I will come out and say hello and welcome them, and and try to prepare them for what is going to happen for the rest of the evening. So I think what's really great is it is another way to build this community, because we see that after they leave, some of the people still stay in contact, and they meet up with each other, and or they decide, hey, well, it doesn't matter, we're still going to come to the next dinner, even if it's going to be Etna again, because they've enjoyed themselves from the service to the food, just to the ambiance of the whole evening.
Connections made, community fostered, for sure.
Yes.
We're in the business of connections and community.
And I will say an interesting kind of drop back to what we do is, right now, the past several dinners have been held in a historical home, which brings some context, specifically if we're doing it in a historical home, say where a enslaved person lived and an enslaved person cooked, it drives the story home because now we're in this space where this person lived, and cooked. So we are trying to foster a relationship and a connection with Sarah Horton, who owns the home in which Nat Fuller lived and cooked. So we're hoping to host a dinner there. And then when we do, we'll probably go back to honoring, maybe we'll spend the whole dinner honoring Nat Fuller in his space, in the kitchen in which he cooked, which for me makes it extremely powerful. And I've been able to actually be in that home and be in the kitchen where he cooked, right after I did the Nat Fuller dinner in 2015. So it was this really great kind of full circle thing for me to, well, here I am. I hosted a dinner. I stood in his shoes. Now I'm actually standing in his home where he prepared meals for his slave owner.
That's exactly what I was going to call it, is a full circle moment for you, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any advice that you would give to chefs who are interested in doing some sort of storytelling experience like this?
Well, I will say first, get your research down. Like you really have to. When you are telling the story of someone else, you want to make sure that you have all the facts. You want to make sure that everything that you're saying is true of that person's life. So you definitely want to get into the research, talk to as many people as you can who may have had a relationship with that person, whether they are alive or whether they're no longer with us. You gotta have that story down. For me, the challenges, and Rhonda will say this too, the challenges, because I'm so much into wanting to tell the story, I have to learn when to shut shut down the story so the guests can eat. Because we know guests sometimes they're listening to you and they're not eating, which means of course their food is getting cold. We encourage them to, yes, listen to me, but please eat while you're listening to me, so your food doesn't get cold. And she knows, and Bria, you saw that I can go on and I can continue to tell these stories because these stories are really inspirational for me, and they inspire me. And when I'm telling them, it just kind of takes over. So I would also say, be definitely, brevity is the key, but still make sure you drive those facts home, and always find those interesting keys or tidbits about that person. Or even if I also will, if I'm featuring a specific ingredient, finding those interesting things that have a really cool story or have a really really great anecdotal way of looking at it, so you can drive it home, say what you have to say, allow the guests to eat their food and enjoy while it's still hot, and then move on to the next course.
And possibly get you a Rhonda, because she did issue a disclaimer to every diner
Yes,
to eat their
she does.
food.
Yeah.
I would also say that that advice, I think, reigns true for what you've put into being an author as well, or the part of writing, the process of writing a book, writing recipes. I think within Taste of State, you do break down a lot of the origin stories of simple ingredients that we all are used to today. And I think that is what is special about that book. And I think it is what's special about you and your process and unique in your process.
Yeah. And it's that was a very interesting process because we started writing the book prior to the pandemic, and then we were right in the middle of the pandemic when we were writing it. And David lives in Columbia, I live in Charleston, so we're about an hour and a half away from each other. So the book really comes together via email and and Dropbox, and and some phone calls here and there, but really email and Dropbox, where we have a list of the ingredients and dishes, and we both decide what we specifically want to write about, and then anything left over we kind of tag team. So it's me sitting down, and he uses, which he has shown me, he uses a really interesting tool for research. We use genealogybank.com, where we can go into and create a search engine for say for okra, and then we also put in, we want only South Carolina newspapers, and we only want them between the years of 1800 and 1830. And then, of course, everything, any newspaper in South Carolina within those 30 years that write anything about okra, have recipes, pops up. And of course, there were some ingredients where thousands of articles popped up, and it's just kind of skimming through, seeing which things are really interesting that we can bring to the book. And it's always, it's a cut and paste or copy and paste into a file. We create a file for okra, and then, my process was, once I did that, I left it alone for at least a day or two. And then I come back fresh, I write my entry, and then I send it to David via email, and then David will send it back with his comments and suggestions. I make my updates, send it back to him via email, and then when we decided that the entry was complete, it was uploaded into Dropbox, and that's actually how we turned in the manuscript. And once again, it was definitely a interesting thing for me to learn how books actually come together. When people say, "Oh, you should write a book," well, it's not like as easy as most people think just to sit down and write a book. You're contracted. We were contracted 75,000 words. The original manuscript came in at 170,000 words. So of course now we have to go back and decide what stays in the book and what is not going to stay in the book. But it still was a really great process for me to learn, and also, of course, working with David, who has, he has the archives, pretty much in his head. I mean, I can email him now a question, and he can send me 50 different resources on that one particular thing, which is really great. Because
can we get his contact in the chat if possible?
very,
No,
very. I loved working with him, even while I was away getting my graduate degree. Because I was writing papers, 3 papers a semester, where there would be times when I just could not find the information I needed, and I would just email him, and he would send me directly to where I needed to be. So that was a really great process. And always have to tell the story of how there's some really great photos in the book. We have some stock photos, we have some old personal photos from David. We were given a grant for photography, but of course we were right in the middle of the pandemic, so no photographer was coming to Charleston or wherever. So the editor Aurora follows me on Instagram, and I post a lot of pictures of my food, of course. But she didn't know that those were Rhonda's photos. So they were Rhonda's photos. I cooked the food, she took the photo, I posted on Instagram. So she said, "I wonder if we can get you to like, here's a list of things we would love for you to cook and shoot at home. And I said, well, those photos, I mean, they're on a phone. And, you know, of course, we know that cameras on cell phones are probably better than most cameras out there today. She said, well, if they fit within the right number of pixels and JPEGs and all those things I didn't really understand, we can use them. And I said, well, you know, full disclosure, they are not my photos. They belong to Rhonda. So he said, well, I wonder if we can have her do the photos. You cook the food. So I would cook the food. She would prop it. She would do whatever she needed to do with it, take photos, send me the photos. I would send them directly to Aurora. She would send them to the art department. And if they fit within the confines of the book, they made it into the book. So the really great thing is they gave her photo cred, and you know, I wanted to make sure that she got that photo cred because they're her photos. And one really great thing is after the photos were taken, that was dinner for us. So there you go. We had a list of really great things we needed to cook. We would
The
pick
date
one.
built in one.
Yes, one night we're gonna make you know, she crab soup, and we make the she crab soup and we take the photo, sit down and eat.
So I just want to hop in here real quick. We're starting to wind down here, and I would like to open up the floor to questions. I do have one from Chef Kelston that I think is a really good one. So let's go with that one first. But we would love, Chef Kevin is a wealth of knowledge and information, as he's just shown to us in this roundtable. He is on Instagram. I will put his Instagram handle in here so you guys can follow him. One thing about his social media is this guy is always doing something. He's always somewhere and he's always doing something. So Chef Kelston has a question of balance and how do you keep things balanced? Because you've got a lot, you've got your book that you have behind you, you have these dinners that you're putting on, you're an instructor. How do you avoid burnout and find balance with all of it?
Well, I will say the first thing is, you know, I have a partner who helps me with balance. She makes sure that I find that balance, and you know, she will, you know, I will say, hey, I got this really great thing coming up. And she will say, well, let's look at the calendar. Do you have time to do this? Is it, you know, and you know, sometimes you have to ask yourself, if something that is brought to you, is it worth the time and effort you need to give it based on the rest of the things that I need to have. So she does a really good job at keeping me balanced, and also making sure that, you know, that I don't get too overloaded and I have the opportunity to take some time for myself. And we try to take time for each other, which offers me that balance. But she also knows that, you know, I like to be on the go. I like to agree to things. Sometimes I will, and honestly, you know, I will. It will slip my mind, and she'll say, "Did you agree to do this and that?" And I'm like, "Oh man, maybe I did, maybe I didn't." So she is very good with making sure that I keep a calendar. In order for me to have that balance, and also understanding that I do understand, for me, that you know, my main profession is I'm an instructor, and I have to give, you know, my time to that first, and then kind of funnel in all the other really great things that we do together. And I think that, you know, just with the dinner, we always try to do it. You know, I don't teach on Fridays, so Friday is always a good day for me to do a dinner, because I don't have to worry about being in class. I don't have to worry about grades and students and all those things. But the balance, once again, it comes from having someone in your life that helps you or makes you understand that you need the balance.
A Rhonda.
Yeah, so step one, get a Rhonda.
Yeah. Where
And
are
then
we
I
at with
think-
cloning?
I think also what you're saying too is about prioritizing and figuring out what's important to you and making that a priority and focusing on that, right?
Yes. Yeah, because it's very easy to get swamped. It's very easy to miss emails, and because they pile up, and it's just very easy for all those things to happen. And you know, you're right. You have to have some balance, because if you're burnt out, you're not going to give your 100% to something that you've agreed to, and that's not a good thing, and that's not a thing that I want to be associated with. So I want to make sure that when I do something, that I'm giving it 100%.
How do you say no?
It's one, prioritizing. It's also just looking at what it is, and a lot of times if it's not on brand for who I am and what I do, um, it's something that we decide that we're not going to do. Right. The things that I do, the most important, the things that I do have to be on brand. They need to be. Is it educational? Is it, is it who I am as a chef? Is it who I am as a person too? Right. Because there are things that I will commit to that are very important to me as it relates to education, or as it relates to, say, you know, high school students who want to come to culinary school. And I'm a judge for the National Pro Start, which is of course a high school cooking competition. um, those things are important to me, and that's where I make the decision. Once again, is it a priority? Is it something that I know I need to give back? um, and is it just something that is just it's just all about making sure it's worth my time. And if not, you, of course, you respectfully decline. But I always make sure that if I can't do it, I know someone that can do it, and I will suggest, well, maybe you can talk to so and so, and they can do it.
Nice. I would welcome anybody if you want to come off of mute, and if you have anything, any commentary or any other questions for Chef Kevin. I'll give you guys a second if anybody wants to, or even to just say hi.
Yeah, I do see some familiar names on here. So hello, Chef Charlotte, Rodney, Ward, Chef Morgan. He's a colleague of mine. He teaches with me at the Culinary Institute of Charleston. So it's really nice to see people that I know who are on supporting the things that I do.
Yes. Love it. Okay, so Courtney has put your Instagram here in the chat. And just in case anybody is not a member of the 1807 Facebook group, I will also drop the link here in the chat for you guys. What we want in there is exactly what Chef Kevin is out there doing, which is why you were just such a perfect guest for us. We're really about telling stories and bringing people together and making connections. And so feel free to, when I put the link in there, become a member if you would like. We do have a request from—
Yes, the best request I've seen all day.
So Rhonda's a celebrity at this point, I think.
Rhonda, can we have an appearance, please?
Yes, we want to know who Rhonda is so we can mold.
Oh my God, Rhonda is
like Rhonda.
ish.
Rhonda's in the kitchen.
Rhonda's in the kitchen frying fish right now. I don't think you guys want to see me.
Voice is
Just
good
go ahead
enough.
and pop. Just show your face right quick.
Let's see. Hold on.
Hi, Rhonda.
Hey,
Hey, Rhonda.
Hello.
hello to
Woman
everyone.
makes it all happen.
Thank you guys. And Chef Kelston, say no. Just say no. That's my answer.
I'm
Things
trying to.
happen. Just say no.
I think it's just easier to just mold another Rhonda and just have her here on the West Coast. So
I have a sister, so
This is a matchmaking story. I love it.
thank you.
I would also like to mention that we have a couple of videos with Chef Kevin on our YouTube video. So if you don't follow us on YouTube as well, please, we are Chef Works. And we have this dinner that we were talking about where Bria actually got to go there and see it live in action. And that's the one that we feature in this YouTube video. And it's just such an amazing experience. And if anybody else has any questions, speak now.
You have to, guys, you got to watch the video. The video is, it's
question.
phenomenal. It's, you guys got it. You guys got it over there.
Yeah.
And I went ahead
And
and
then all your reels too, when you asked me to be a collaborator, I'm like, heck yes. Heck yes. Because
We have to thank Rachel on the call for that as well.
They
Yeah,
are
shout out to
awesome.
Rachel.
So thank you, Rachel. Thank you.
yes, and I put the link to our YouTube channel in the chat. Also make sure you're following us on social media because we are sharing more content for the remaining of the week and you definitely don't want to miss out on what we have coming up. So make sure you're following us on Instagram and Facebook, but you can see the video right now on our YouTube channel.
And I think Athar had a question.
Oh yeah. Hello. I had a question about if I wanted to introduce antebellum food to a chef in Berlin, Germany, what food would I recommend? Would you recommend?
Well, you have to start with rice, Carolina Gold rice specifically. Peas, whether they're black-eyed peas, sea island red peas, okra is always a good one. Sweet potatoes, if you can find in season watermelon, is always is always a good one because it does have some connection from Africa to the South specifically, not necessarily specifically Charleston, but to the South. But definitely rice, peas, okra, sweet potatoes, watermelon. If you can get it, you can do bene or bene seeds, which are there's sesame seeds that come to us from Africa. You can go to, if you're familiar with Anson Mills, which is a mill here in South Carolina. It's in Columbia. They actually, cultivate and they're producing a lot of the heirloom grains and peas that were cultivated by enslaved African Americans, whether it's specifically here in the Charleston area or in the South in general. So I would definitely start there. Yes.
And more importantly, what is the page for the okra fritter? Because I think it's exactly what you're describing.
Yeah.
The okra fritter, yeah.
Because that is the one that I've tasted and it's superb.
Yeah. That was kind of a last minute recipe.
I think we're also posting it.
Yeah, we write about fritters and we had a few, and David said, well, we need another recipe for fritters. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? And I looked over in the kitchen on the counter. I had some okra, I had some tomatoes. I was like, okra and tomato fritter. And then the recipe magically appeared. And it's been a favorite of a lot of people that actually purchased the book. It's been written up in a lot of magazines, and I've gotten a lot of emails from people who have tried to make them at home. So yes. And I forgot to tell you the page number.
And that video is out on YouTube. I put the link there.
Okay, it is on page 66. there's a picture of the fritters that, of course, Rhonda took, and then the recipe.
Love it. Lloyd would like to know, what's your favorite historical dish to prepare?
Oh,
I think the one that I had for sure.
definitely. I mean, I do. Especially when the season is in, the okra fritters is one. Definitely Carolina Gold rice, whether it's made into a purlieu, and I think you guys have the video of the Hop and John fritters on, right? So Hop and John is a dish that definitely has a lot of cultural significance in the African American community. I decided to turn it to a fritter. It's a really cool thing. It's something that traditionally is eaten during New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, but I'm of the belief that you can eat it pretty much any time that you want to eat it. I mean, it's a rice and pea dish, and the beauty of the dish is that for me, the beauty of any rice dish is that no matter where you go in the world, there is a quintessential rice dish of a specific culture, and that is one of those dishes specific to African Americans.
I think you also have a recipe for cornbread stuffed. Was it the quail?
I do have the recipe. There is a recipe in the book for the cornbread. The recipe we used for the dinner was actually a recipe that came from Edna's book, Taste of Country Cooking. That is probably one of her most popular books. If you get any Edna Lewis book, that is a book that you should get. But that was the entree for that dinner. So we stuffed the quail with cornbread stuffing and some really good collard greens that Rhonda made. I will make that.
Rhonda's collard greens are different.
And that was definitely, once again, that was a true homage to Edna, the fact that she raised quail and raised pheasant on her farm. And she was one of those people that basically, if she didn't grow it or she didn't make it, like she didn't even have a freezer in her restaurants or a freezer at home. She's very much, farm to table. What I raise, what I cultivate is what I'm going to cook.
Amazing. Okay. So if for any of your remaining questions, I'm going to post it inside the live stream of this so we can go ahead and get Chef Kevin back into his day here. I want to say thank you, Chef Kevin, and Rhonda. Rhonda, thank you for all of your hard work. We have been coordinating with them for a couple of weeks now, and you guys are just a powerhouse of a team.
Thank you.
So congratulations to both of you for all of your success and all of the success that's continuing to come your way. It's very well deserved. And thank you for being a member of Table 1807.
Thank you.
And I also want to say thank you to Bria for hosting for us today. Now that she has been officially introduced into the group, you guys are going to be seeing her a lot around there. So Bria, our bestie.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
And so don't forget, join us in 1807 if you aren't there already. Please follow us on social media as well as Chef Kevin. His journey is always really fun to watch. And if you guys have any other questions, we will see you all in the Facebook group. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.